People be surprised. I have friends, all kinds of letters. Everybody loves me, and I love everybody. I got friends who are L's, I got friends who are B's, and I got friends who are G's. But the T's hate my fucking guts. And I don't blame them. It's not their fault, it's mine. I can't stop telling jokes about these things.
Dave Chappelle has attacked the woke culture again and again through his jokes and comedy specials, yet he has made it clear that he doesn't care if they get upset with him. And this seems to infuriate woke people the more. So as you'd imagine, for years, the woke brigade have even tried to cancel Chappelle over some of the things he says in his comedy specials. But somehow, the comedian still keeps coming out on top, leaving no doubt that he would not be controlled or silenced.
To the transgender community, I am more than willing to give you an audience. You will not summon me. I am not bending to anybody's demands.
You see, for more than 30 years, Dave's been cracking jokes and keeping people laughing. But lately, he's turned his comedy towards calling out the flaws in the woke culture and pointing out all the double standards. And of course, not everyone's thrilled about it. He's definitely faced his share of backlash, especially because he jokes about pretty much everything. But when people ask him to tone it down or doesn't hold back at all, he says what he thinks, no filter.
You guys gotta remember, I'm not saying it to be mean. I'm saying it because it's funny. And everything's funny till it happens to you.
Well, it doesn't take a genius to see that Dave is unapologetic about his views. But on the other hand, what did he mean by his last statement? Everything is funny until it happens to you. Well, he clears it up in this interview.
Bad things happen to someone else, that's not necessarily funny.
Look at it this way. I grew up in the crack epidemic. I tell jokes about it. I grew up in the crack epidemic, and now there's an opioid epidemic. Are they treating the opioid epidemic the way that they treated the crack epidemic? No, this is a national health emergency. When we were coming up, we were policed by the National Guard, addicts were criminals. Now they understand addicts are sick people. And maybe it's because the demographic of the opioid epidemic is not the same demographic of the crack epidemic.
Dave has a strong take on how the media and news agencies handle drug crises, and he doesn't shy away from calling out what he sees as a double standard. He points out that during the crack epidemic, which affected mostly black communities, addicts were treated like criminals. But when the opioid epidemic hit, affecting mostly white communities, suddenly addicts were seen as sick people who needed care and compassion. To him, it's a clear example of how the rules change depending on who's affected. He later goes on to sum it all up nicely.
Right, so now that your community is getting destroyed, it's a whole nother ball game. And then it's a huge window of empathy. Oh my God, we can see each other. We both went through similar pain. But I'm just saying everything's funny till it happens to you is more about empathy.
Now, this is where it gets interesting. Everyone who knows Dave understands how unapologetic he is about his jokes, but he really makes his stance clear when he shares a story about a fan mail from a transgender.
And you know what, man? Whoever wrote this letter truly loves me. I mean, they were really fucking nice in the letter. And then they described to me what it was like to come to the show, how excited they were, how much fun they were having. And then they said that when I got to my jokes about transgenders, that they were, quote, devastated.
This just shows how picky some woke people can be when it comes to jokes about their beliefs. The trans person in question was clearly a fan of Dave's, but still felt hurt by one of his jokes. Now, other comedians might feel bad or even remorseful in a situation like that, but not Dave.
Now, I'm going to be real for a second. You got to understand, I never feel bad about anything I say up here.
So we know by now that Dave isn't the type to feel remorse or back down from what he says. But if you've been following him, it might seem like he's got a bit of a beef with the LGBTQ community. The real question is why? Well, one theory is that he can't stand how overly sensitive some people can be. It's It's almost like there's this unspoken rule that you can never upset them, and everyone's expected to follow it. And if you're wondering just how much that gets under Dave's skin, check this out.
The rule is that no matter what you do in your artistic expression, you are never, ever allowed to upset the alphabet people.
However, he seems to specifically consider the transgender idea a hilarious one, and every chance he gets, Dave makes a joke out of it.
I feel bad for tees, but they're so confusing. And it's not all my fault. I feel like they need to take some responsibility for my jokes. Because I didn't come up with this idea on my own, this idea that a person can be born in the wrong body. But they have to admit, that's a fucking hilarious predicament.
But if you're still on the fence as to his stance here, he makes it clearer by using himself to cite an example.
If it happened to me, you'd laugh, wouldn't you? That wouldn't be funny if it happened to me? I think it would be. What if it did? What if I was Chinese, but born in this nigger body? That's not funny.
In typical Dave fashion, he doesn't shy away from making jokes about trans people. And, as always, he's not afraid of the backlash that comes with it. For him, it's all about his belief that everything can be funny. And he's not out to be mean or insensitive, just honest and realistic in his comedy. When it comes to keeping it real, Dave's got some pretty bold opinions on topics like gender differences, equal rights, and especially the whole debate about trans people competing in sports. He doesn't tiptoe around the subject. He dives right into the deep end with his usual mix of humor and hard truths.
When I watch sports, I be thinking about, think about, okay, say LeBron James changed his gender. You know what I mean? Okay, can he stay in the NBA, or because he's a woman, does he have to go to the WNBA where he will score 840 points a game?
Dave Chappelle thinks some of the ideas coming from the LGBTQ community are just flat out ridiculous. Sure, he gets it. Gender is evolving. But he feels like woke culture is turning a blind eye to some pretty obvious biological differences, especially when it comes to things like sports. I mean, in his world, it's like watching a giraffe compete in a sprint race with cheetahs. Everyone's pretending it's a fair race, but come on. He loves pointing out these big, headline-making examples that he feels just highlight how some of these conversations have taken a sharp left turn into what-the-heck territory. At the core, though, Chappelle's all about bringing back a bit of practicality and common sense in a world he thinks is getting way too caught up in being politically correct. But let's go back to the trans community for a moment and revisit how Dave feels about them. Or rather, one of the most popular trans people, Caitlyn Jenner. If you're asking yourself what Dave's thoughts on Caitlyn transitioning into a woman, well, he doesn't seem to necessarily be annoyed by that. However, Dave is pissed off about one thing, and one thing only.
Caitlyn Jenner, whom I've met, wonderful person, Caitlyn Jenner was voted Woman of the Year. Her first year as a woman. Ain't that something? Beat every bitch in Detroit, she's better than all of them. Never even had a period. Ain't that something? Oh, I'd be mad as shit if I was a woman. I'd be mad if I was me.
While some may feel Dave is against Caitlyn because she's transgender, that won't be true. It wasn't because she's transgender. Oh no, it's because he felt like it completely belittled other women. I mean, can you imagine? It's like awarding a white guy Black Man of the Year after spending one weekend at a barbecue. In Dave's mind, it's not about who Caitlyn is. It's the idea that after 1 year, she's already topping the charts of womanhood, leaving everyone else who's been a woman their whole life wondering, really? But here's what most people don't realize. Back when Dave Chappelle was dropping all these truth bombs, it was right in the middle of peak woke era. Cancel culture was out for blood, and everyone seemed to be walking on eggshells. But Dave? No, he kept speaking his mind like he had a lifetime supply of I don't care in his pocket. He wasn't afraid of the consequences, and he didn't flinch. And because of that, a lot of comedians who came after him are giving him props for paving the way. One of his biggest fans? None other than Kevin Hart.
That got the attention that no others can get outside of a myself, a Rock, a Seinfeld. He said, in the time where the fucking fire is the hottest, I'm going to do what nobody else will. You gotta fucking applaud that.
He stood up for comedy.
He stood up for comedy. Whether you want to see that or not,
Right.
he did that.
Remember how we mentioned Dave's views on the LGBTQ community? A lot of folks took that to mean he flat out hated them and thought he was just using his platform to throw shade every chance he got. But Dave, being Dave, wasn't about to let that slide. In one of his specials, he decided to clear things up and totally flip the script. He took the opportunity to show that there was a bigger issue at play, one no one even saw coming.
I want everyone in this audience to know that even though the media frames this, that it's me versus that community, it's not what it is. Do not blame the LGBTQ community for any of this shit. This has nothing to do with them. It's about corporate interests and what I can say and what I cannot say.
If you're wondering whether all the hate over the years has slowed Chappelle down, the answer is a big fat no. He's still out there, fully committed to sharing his opinions through comedy, no matter how much backlash he gets. But just in case anyone's still unclear, even though he extends an olive branch to members of the LGBTQ community, he still made his stance on the matter clear.
Community, I am more than willing to give you an audience, but you will not summon me. I am not bending to anybody's demands.
So, do you think comedians like Chappelle should be held accountable for offending certain groups, or is it essential to promote freedom of speech? Let us know in the comments section below, and subscribe to the channel for more videos on woke culture.